Hi everyone, it's Chris with Lucy again, talking about class still. We are now moving on to some more contemporary theories of class. You've probably watched some of the videos about the classical theories, including Marx and Weber. We're now going to be talking about Eric Olin Wright. So, Lucy, how does Wright see class?
Okay, well, Wright is still alive today, so instead of us studying dead white men, we're now looking at an alive white man. He's an American sociologist, and so he's been looking at, whereas the classical theorists were looking at industrial societies, now our economies, most if not all economies in Western societies have changed, and we're very much service economies, so we don't manufacture very many products at all in Australia anymore, but we have a lot of skill for service-based things like finance and law and education and a whole bunch of different things. So what that means in terms of class is that you have a much larger and more diverse middle class. It's quite a different structure from the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. So Wright is also Marxist, so he takes Marx's model as the beginning point, and so he has 6 classes that he sees. And in order to understand that, it's best to talk about it as a first division and a second division. So the first division he makes is along the same lines as Marx, whether you own capital or not. And so the first 2 of his 6 classes own capital. And he calls them the bourgeoisie. They're your classic capitalists. They own enough capital that they can live off the profit, the surplus value, the earnings from that capital. And they employ other people to do the work. So a classic bourgeoisie or capitalist in Wright's model doesn't have to work themselves. The second bourgeoisie class or bourgeois class that he identifies, he calls the petit bourgeoisie. And they would include, so they're people that own capital, they own their own businesses, but those businesses are not so profitable that they don't have to work. The petty bourgeoisie work in their own businesses. So that might be a tradie, an electrician, who employs 4, 5, 6 other electricians to work with him or her, but they can't just not work. They've still got to work in their own company.
Mm-hmm. And what about the other classes? What is the second division?
Okay, so the second division again follows Marx in determining how it's, if you fall into that. And the second class is that you don't own capital. Okay, so you are selling your labour. You're a wage labourer. But he said, and that's what most of us are, but he said there's a huge difference between different types of labour, and we'd kind of talked a little bit in the Weber one about the lawyer and the truck driver who might earn similar amounts of money, but they're quite different. They're quite different occupations. So he identified 4 groups. The first one he called expert managers. So an expert manager has managerial authority and occupational skill. And I'll give a few more examples of these in a minute. Next was managers. So managers have managerial authority but no specialised occupational skill. We're seeing more and more of those around the place nowadays. The third class here is experts, and they have occupational skill but no managerial authority. So you and I might be that. And then the last class are workers who have neither managerial authority nor an expert skill. So that might be, not to underestimate the skill required to drive a haul pack, that might be...
I couldn't do it.
No, I don't think I could either. Nonetheless, I think in this theory, that's where our truck driver would sit. And we may have a similar income level, but we have quite different conditions of work and standing in society and quite a different class position. And so say if you go back to thinking about Marx's idea of having a shared class interest, Wright's model starts to give us some more categories for understanding why university lecturers and haul pack drivers aren't sharing or feeling class solidarity. So part of what he was about, and I'm probably leaping ahead a little here, but part of what Wright was about was he was saying, yes, we need a better model to describe a class position or someone's class location, but that's not the main purpose of the exercise. The reason we need a better description of class is in order to be able to better understand how class location contributes to social and economic inequality. So he was very concerned about inequality, and his model gives us a richer picture or a richer framework for understanding how that inequality is produced and sustained over time.
So the point of it is not to go through an exercise trying to put everyone in a box just for the sake of it, but in order to allow us to understand how overall society works to create class inequality.
Yes, and I guess, yes, to create class inequality and to keep us distant from each other and feeling distant from each other, and to understand who we might be able to join with, and to see different ways in which inequality works in society today so that we can better challenge it.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Yes, so one last thing. He also saw that class relations, in the same way as Marx, he saw them as exploitative. But he saw them, or his model allows us to see the different types of exploitation and oppression that you might have. So the exploitation of the worker is very, very different to that of the expert manager, for example. And so, you know, if we've got our expert manager who has both occupational skill and managerial authority, they really occupy a very, very different social position to a worker who has neither managerial authority nor specialised skill.
So hang on a minute, does the expert manager actually get exploited?
That's a very good question. Wright would say that they do to an extent, in that they are selling their labour and to the bourgeoisie, who will make money, who will make surplus value. If that expert manager wasn't making profit for the bourgeoisie, then that position wouldn't exist. So they are still earning less than they are producing. However, because of having both authority and expert skill, they're able to negotiate a much better deal for themselves with the bourgeoisie than the worker. And so they're unlikely to feel any great solidarity. And so we start to have all these different layers within our class structure and within middle class structure in particular.
Okay, all right. Thanks very much.
Thank you.